soul.
This is Bass Talk Live. Your host, Mark Jeffries and Matt Pangrat. BTL is brought to you by Lowrance, Lose, Strike King Lures, Bass Cat Boats, Ducket Fishing, Spro, AFCO, Big Bite Baits, Sunline, and TH Marine. BTL coming at you. Good Monday, everybody. Welcome once again to another edition of BTL Bass Talk Live, where Frank and I are going to talk bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about. Yes, my special guest host this week, Mr. Frank Scalish. Frank, thanks for sitting in for Matthew.
Well, it's my pleasure. You know, he's got big shoes to fill, so, you know, I'll do what I can.
Wow. We have just a fantastic week this week. Frank's going to be with us all 3 days as Matthew tries to conquer a very tough Lake Neely Henry, I think is where they're at in Alabama. But I got to tell you, Frank, man, my man is a little frustrated right now because he was at Toledo Bend last week for the Bass Nation Regional, and the man had to go through all kinds of adversity, all right? Not from a personal perspective, just from an equipment perspective and some of the challenges that you have when you do this. As much as he does it, as much as you do it, you're going to have situations that take place that you're going to have to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, it's that old adage, you know, it's all the uncontrollable variables that get in the way. You can't help breakdowns, you can't help problems on the road. It's just it's nature of the beast, and the more travel you do, the more you encounter that stuff.
Yeah. So he is at the second. Is it the second or the third? Geez, should have made some notes. Open, and he's sitting in a really, really good spot if he can pull it together and refocus. And I told him on the phone last night or yesterday, I said, look, dude, you can't change history. You can only look forward to the future. Take care of what you can control this week and make things happen. Is that good advice?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only advice you can give the guy, because here the reality of it is it's one fish at a time. You can't worry about fish you haven't caught yet. You got to worry about the first one. Once you get the first one in the boat, you go to the second one. And as the day unfolds, you know, everything going in your favor, you're calling fish and you're getting through it. And the thing that I did when I was on the road that was probably the hardest thing to do is I called it tunnel vision. The minute I left my house, my only focus was on the event. I tried to block everything out. If things happened on the road, flat tires, I threw wheel bearings going to California.
Yeah.
Both front wheel bearings went out.
Wow.
On me. And I was like, okay, I got to find a place to fix it because, you know, I got to get to the lake. And you kind of put it behind you. And only worry about, you know, if you're not paying attention when you make that cast, if you're not paying attention, you could miss a critical clue, because the first bass you catch can tell you a lot of information if you're on top of that.
Well, let's hope he processes a lot of information this week. He's only going to get 2 days of practice. All right. Yeah. 2 days. That's it, on a body of water that he's never been on before. But I know for a fact he did a ton of homework, did a lot of research. So we'll see. You know, spotted bass, you can make the decision on that body of water, try to target spots, do a little fall finessing, or, you know, go big and try to catch largemouths. And he doesn't know what he's going to do yet. Heck, he hasn't even been on the water yet, but he does have a plan, all right, which is important.
A plan is good.
All right, great show today, folks. We had Frank on. What was it, a couple of weeks ago, talked about boat setup for rough water, and then we got a bunch of prop questions. So Frank has a great relationship with one of the top prop guys in the nation. We're going to have Todd on here after our first break. And folks, if you have prop questions, this is the show to ask them, right, Frank?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, Todd will get involved in the particulars about, setting up a bass boat, rough water handling, speed, just attitude in general. Every bass boat has a different attitude, and you have to find where that boat likes to run in order to set it up properly. And Todd can cover all that.
How did you become friends with Todd?
Prop issues, to be
Really?
honest with you. A billion years ago, because I'm a billion years old, and a billion years ago, I was running a boat and I was having some performance issues. And back then I was a little kid, really, essentially. I was a boy. And, I thought, you got to go faster. I got to go faster. I got to go faster. And I had the boat maxed out. I couldn't get anything else out of it unless I wanted to do motor work. And at that point in time, I didn't have enough money to put gas in the dang thing. So, I found Todd. I heard about Todd. Actually, I worked with his father first. Tom. I worked with Tom first, and then Todd came into the picture, and we hit it off, and we actually became friends. And so, we get together and we test these boats out, and we run them, and we do all kinds of crazy stuff to them, because once we get it dialed in, then we play and we see, what if we did this, or what if we did that, or you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And he's been racing boats his whole life since he was a kid. And so he knows fast. I don't think there's anybody else on the planet that knows fast like this guy knows fast. So I grew up on the big water on Lake Erie, so I know how to drive in rough water. Mm-hmm. So the two of us kind of converged, and we said, let's find the best of both worlds and see what we can do. And so that's what we've been doing basically for, I don't even know how many years. So wow. We got some experience there.
All right. Very cool. So if you have prop questions, boat setup questions, this is the show. We'll get to Todd here in about 5-10 minutes. All right, Frank, we do have an event taking place. They're wrapping up things today on Lake Chickamauga, and it has been brutal. Now, I know they had a shortened day 3. They had a 2.5-hour fog delay, but man, it has been brutal. The guy that's leading the thing after 3 days, averaging a little bit over 14 pounds, and it only took 29.6 pounds after 3 days to make the top 10.
Yeah, and this is coming from a lake that all summer long's been giving up gigantic weight. Just so the fans watching know. Here's the issue. This is a fall transition, okay? Fall fishing is phenomenal, but the fall transition is tricky because the bait fish are starting to move. Some of the bass are moving with the bait. Some of the bass are still kind of stuck between summer and fall, and it's getting goofy. And this is what these guys are experiencing. Now, the other issue here is it's a grass lake. So grass becomes very important. The thing I like to do when it's a predominantly grass lake is I pretend the grass doesn't exist and I structure fish. So in other words, the grass becomes cover on the structure. And that's kind of how I just look for high percentage, places. And here, I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay.
Last week I was out filming one of my Crank It Up episodes, and I went to this lake. It's a very clean lake, very clear, and it's up north a couple hours from here, and it's a grass lake. So when I got there, the lake has several types of vegetation. It has cabbage grass, eel grass, coontail, and milfoil. And so, when I got there, this summer, I was actually catching them out of the cabbage grass, which is important. You got to know what grasses the lakes have. So I was catching them out of the cabbage grass. Anyway, to make a long story short, I found out that any irregularity in contour would form an inside swing or an outside point type of thing. The bass were in those areas, but they were only on the milfoil. The milfoil, they sprayed the lake and killed the milfoil, but the milfoil started coming back. So it was like a small carpeting of milfoil on the bottom. So I was running a fat-free shad number 6 over the top of that milfoil and catching them. And I got a great show and caught some nice big fish. So a few days ago, we have a lake really close to my house. exactly the same scenario. It's got several different types of grasses, and it has milfoil, and it's super clean, super clear. So I said, well, I can go get another show on that lake. It'll be different because the lake is different, but I can do the same thing. Dude, I went out there, I cranked my brains out. I couldn't touch a fish on a crankbait. Same stuff, running it over the milfoil, doing everything. Couldn't touch it. So I wound up going to a Ned rig with a 5-inch Yum Dinger on it. And that was the only way I could catch them in this lake. It was the absolute only way. I threw the jigs. I did everything I do in these grass lakes. Could not. This fall transition is so ridiculous because it literally changes by the minute. And if you're lucky enough, especially in grass lakes, to find a pot of fish in a certain area, you get fat fast. But if you don't, you're scratching for one here and one there and hoping they're big ones.
All right, man. I know the number is different across the nation, but what is the magic water temp number that you like to see during the fall? When it hits, what do you see historically the fish really start to turn on?
I do really good when it's around 55, 56 degrees, and I catch them like mad. I catch more fish from 55 degrees to 38-degree water temperature than I do all year.
Wow.
It's unbelievable. But we live up north.
Yeah.
So they're not, their behavior is much different. Like all winter long, I fish all winter until I can't launch a boat anymore. And I catch more fish in January. I mean, it's ridiculous. But you go down south, and depending on where you're at, January spawning season already. So, I mean, it's really bizarre, you know. And the lake, I think the lakes down south are tougher to fish in the winter, in my opinion.
I've heard over the years that below 60 in the fall, in general terms, you know, not take into consideration, you know, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, Arkansas, that kind of stuff. When it gets below 60, it seems that is the magic number, 59, 58. With your experience in the South, do you buck that trend, or do you think they're dead on?
No, I think they're dead on. And here's part of the reason why. The bass start to hang out in big aggregates of fish. You know, everybody says they're schooling fish. Bass are not a schooling fish, but they'll hang out in big groups. Okay, as the water temperatures get cooler, they don't occupy as much of the water column. So when you find them, you find gobs of them. And this is why it's so spectacular once those water temperatures start to dip. Plus, the bait fish become way more predictable then. They're all ganging up in big balls and schools, and they're migrating to creek mouths or grass edges. If it's a grass lake, they migrate to the grass edges. And so you're following the food table to the bass, essentially.
There you have it. That's some good stuff. All right, man. The biggest shocker, I think, this past week of what was going down in Tennessee at the Chick was the performance of Clark Wendelin. Clark, a seasoned vet, been doing this game forever. I mean, one of the top guys out there on tour. He caught one fish in 2 days, and he had a pretty commanding Angler of the Year lead. Now he drops all the way down to third, and with one event left, when we had Mark Menendez on and we were doing the watch party on Friday, we both felt that Clark would be able to pull through and actually find something. But for him to get shut out and only catch one fish on day one, and that's it for the entire tournament, that's got to be the biggest story. I know somebody's going to win, but I think all expectations were that Clark was going to solidify his lead going into the final event at Lake Fork and really have a good shot at winning Angler of the Year. Now it's turned into like a four angler race, and David Mullins has taken over the lead. Austin Felix, who actually made the final day, who's fishing today, could actually move up a little bit more. Now what we have, Frank, is the amount of pressure, the amount of entertainment, the amount of just guys having to do what they have to do at this final event to win Angler of the Year. It's going to be great for the fans.
Yeah, it's really going to be exciting because now it's a shootout.
Yeah.
I mean, Clark honestly had the opportunity to run away with it this week. Unfortunately, that's how things happen in this game. There's no guarantees in the game of fishing. So now he's got to fish his rear end off at the next event, and he's got to catch them, and he's got to do well because everybody, the other guys now are in striking distance. So it's going to make it exciting because every fish counts. I mean, when you have these tough tournaments, a lost fish can cripple you.
Yeah.
When it's a slugfest, if you're on Lake Erie catching 4 and 5 pound smallmouths one after the other, you lose one, you go, oh well, I'm gonna catch another one. But over here, you lose one, and your heart comes out of your throat because you may not catch another one.
Yeah.
And
What's your experience on Lake Fork? Any?
Yeah, I fished Fork a long, long time ago. I fished it during the spring, and it was a freak show. I mean, it's got some giant fish in it, and but that was in the spring. Some fish were on bed, some fish were guarding fry, some fish were just starting to move offshore. I would actually, my druthers are offshore fishing, so I would love to fish it when the crankbait bites on over there.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people are saying, Frank, that the crankbait is going to be a big, big player for fall fishing on Lake Fork, but we'll see. Well, right now, we will see if Lee Livesay can get it done, get the blue trophy, and then move on. And Austin Felix sitting in second place in the Angler of the Year race, and then David Mullins is your leader. And it could change if Felix was to put together a miraculous day today and win the thing. He would probably move up, and I think the point calculation would be that he would actually take over the lead by 1 point, but I'm not sure on that. But plenty of excitement, man.
Yeah, and 1 point's negligible. I mean,
actually 10 is, especially when it comes to fall fishing, dude.
Right.
And what they're going through right now. Hey, who would have thought? Everybody said that it was going to be tough at the Chick. I don't think anybody realized it was going to be this tough. I mean, come on. 14 pounds leading the thing each day?
But don't forget, dude, didn't they have like a million tournaments on the lake prior to this?
Yeah.
So you have to understand, fishing pressure changes things. It changes a lot of things because the easy bass plucked away. All right. Yeah. Then they're relocated to a weigh-in site and then released. So those fish are theoretically removed from where they were. A lot of these guys could be fishing really great places, but they got, spanked for the last 2 weeks. So, I mean, that matters.
Oh yeah. No, you're dead on, man. And you see these guys where they're fishing. You see the boats that are around them. A lot of frog fishing going on.
Yeah.
I know there was a big time. He had 16 pounds yesterday on a frog after the fog delay. So, hey, we asked the fans on Friday when we were doing the watch party, do you like watching a grind? And the vast majority of people said, yeah, they like to see the pros relate to what some of us, in fact, most of us, struggle with this time of the year, going out, spending a Saturday or a Sunday on the water, and having a pretty big challenge just to catch some fish.
Yeah, grinders are crazy because, grinders are actually great tournaments as a competitor to be fishing in, because if you can figure that little tiny thing out, it gives you a much more chance to win the event. Slugfests are ridiculous because I was on Clear Lake. Okay, we had an elite series on Clear Lake. I'm on Clear Lake. I'm catching 21 to 20 pounds a day, give or take. I'm happy as a clam. Dude, when I came to the weigh-in, I had 20 pounds, and they're like, well, you're going to get about 3 seconds on stage, because if you don't have at least 35 pounds, you're not going to even get taught. I'm like, what? These dudes were catching over there. You had to have a bag. I think it was for every bass bigger than, I don't know what it was, 8 pounds. Maybe.
Yeah, it had to be in a
separate bag.
Yeah.
My eyes go, I'm seeing guys with 5 bags coming to the, like, holy crap, I'm on the wrong lake. So, I think I like grinders better.
Wow. Yeah, I remember that. That was insane, because I remember shooting photos when guys were coming in and they were asking them, whoever was handing out bags, well, how many do you need?
Yeah.
How many do you need? Do you need 3? You need 4? How many do you need? Jeez.
I know.
That's good memories, man. Great stuff there. All right, so let's do this. Let's take a break. I know a lot of people are checking out what's going on over on Bassmaster.com the rest of the day, see who can get the blue trophy. But November on Lake Fork. Can't wait for that one. Such an exciting event. I've been on Lake Fork in the fall. There's a couple of guys that I used to work with at UPS, and we would take a trip to Lake Fork. We would do, and this was 20, 30 years ago. A lot has changed, but we would do a spring trip and we would do a fall trip. We would have more fun in the fall trip because we would catch more fish because the pressure wasn't there like it was in the spring. And what's funny is you mentioned during the grind, you can find these little characteristics or little areas, techniques that are somewhat unique, that are different, that are special. And I can remember being down there when it was just pouring rain. It was like 50 degrees, absolutely miserable. One of the best days on the water I've ever had on Fork, numbers-wise. So, I don't know, man. We'll see. I know a lot of people in Texas that guide on Lake Fork that are really, really curious to see how this is going to play out when the guys come there, and it's a little bit tougher. And it's fall fishing, man. A lot of people love fishing in the fall. They just don't, including myself, like this whole transition period. Yeah. It sucks.
Yeah, the transition's brutal. It really is a brutal place to be. But, I mean, you can make it work for you. There's for sure.
All right, we'll talk more about transition during the week. Right now, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. We're going to talk props and boat setup. Folks, if you have questions, get them ready with one of the best prop guys in the nation. All right, we'll take a break. Be back here on a Monday. Good to be back in studio. Great shows this week with Frank. Everybody stay tuned.
The ultimate fishing system starts with Lowrance HDS Live. The best fish finding tools, from chirp sonar and fish reveal to side scan and down scan imaging, and complete touchscreen control from your trolling motor to your big motor.
We've paired one of the most iconic hulls in the history of bass boats with a proven lineup of trusted accessories. We're bringing you best-in-class value and performance, leaving others in your wake. Turnkey value, turnkey performance. The Pantera 2 is an overachiever in the 19-foot category. Once you hit the throttle, you'll feel the rush, and there's no looking back.
Kevin, what are you doing here?
Oh, I'm just filling in for Billy.
I need a 660 shad crankbaits in the Series 5 model.
We're out.
You're not out. You got all kinds of them right there.
We're out.
Kevin, I need 6.
Have a lollipop.
I do not want a lollipop.
Have a lollipop.
Do you have it in sexy shad color?
Let's face it, fishing electronics are no longer an afterthought. They've become a necessity. And at the Bass Tank, our experts match you with the right electronics, provide professional installation, and educate you to help maximize your catching results while providing support along the way. Because let's be honest, it's about catching, not just fishing. And when you're ready for better results, join the Bass Tank team. Visit us today on Facebook or go to thebasstank.com.
Hey everybody, Todd Faircloth here. Want to show you one of my favorite braided lines, SX1 30-pound Sunline braid. I use this braided line for a couple of different applications, and one of my favorites to use for this line is a swim jig. Casts great, and it's small diameter, and just works really great on a swim jig. Another technique I like to use for 30-pound SX1 Sunline braid is whenever I'm flipping like a light, say an 1/8 to a 1/4 ounce weight in grass, small diameter, I don't lose much action on my worm, just works great in those scenarios. So if you're looking for a braided line for a swim jig or fishing a light Texas rig, check out Sunline's SX1 30-pound braid.
At Duckett Fishing, we have assembled the top pros in the country to help us design rods to give you a competitive advantage. Castability, strength, durability, action, sensitivity, weight and balance, and consistency. Combine that with the best warranty in the industry, and you have rods that are pro-driven.
Duckett Fishing, pro-driven.
Blue Water by TH Marine. Offering LED lighting solutions for your boat, trailer, truck, ATV, and so much more. Engineered and built to be rugged with waterproof and submersible options. Designed for easy installation, Blue Water is available in a variety of colors and styles. All backed by a limited lifetime warranty. Blue Water by TH Marine.
All right, we are back kicking off the week with our special guest host, Frank Scalish. And it is time to go to our very special guest, Todd Bucknell. And Frank, let's bring him in now. Todd, you there?
I'm here, Mark. How are you?
I'm great, man. Nice to meet you. I am very, very thankful and very appreciative that you would come on the show and talk about boat setup and props. And this all comes with the high recommendation of Frank. Frank says you're the best in the business, man.
Well, we've been doing it a little while. There's no question about it. As Frank had mentioned, we met, and because he's from the area, and every time Frank got another boat, we would meet down at the lake, accomplish what really Frank's goals were for rough water handling. Because knowing the bass boat market the way that we do, there is big water fishing, there's smooth river and smaller lake fishing. So we've always said, and Frank will agree with this too, that you have to really set up the boat where how you're going to use it 90% of the time. Because if the boat's capable of X amount of speed, that's great. But if you're never going to see that type of speed with the water conditions, then you have to set up for how you're using the boat.
All right, let's do this. Give the fans a little bit of background on yourself and really talk a little bit about the background on your company and what you do.
All right. Well, Hydromotive was started by my dad in the early 80s. My dad started the company, being that there was really not a whole lot of pleasure performance markets for propellers, nose cones, that type of thing back in the late 70s, early 80s. So he came up with a nose cone design and then started the manufacturing process with the propellers, just as an avenue to have another company or some other pieces, parts that people could, put on their boat to make it run better if they were interested in a little bit more of the performance arena. I grew up, my background is outboard circle racing. So I learned more than I could probably repeat in those years as a young kid, like a sponge, trying to obtain the knowledge of how to set up a boat and, handling and acceleration, so on and so forth. So, when I came on full time with Dad, it was just a natural fit because we've been doing this our whole lives as far as setting up boats and trying to get the most out of them.
All right, very cool. All right, we got to get this out of the way because some people are already asking about it. All right, what's the fastest you've been in that Allison?
Oh man, Frank's gonna put me on the spot here. He kind of put me in the pigeonhole. Let's just say, Mark, it runs very, very well, and it will 9 to 10,000 RPM with a 28 pitch propeller is no problem. So we'll just leave it there.
Don't be shy, dude.
I'm not going to be shy. It runs very well. It is a purpose built toy. The boat's a 1984. It's kind of like a classic hot rod. The motor is a 2.5 Mercury. It's their Formula One drag motor. And this motor, believe it or not, Mark, does not even start breathing or making power until you get past 93 to 9,500 RPM.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's freaky. It's freaky.
Right. 120? 120? 110?
I'm going to say easily, and you better say the truth.
I'm not going to argue with Frank, but we don't like talking numbers. We just like running down the water.
All right, let's do this. There are so many people out there that are weekend anglers, even the recreational people that just go out. They don't fish a whole lot of tournaments. They may fish a club tournament. When they look at their prop, and what would be just some basic principles for somebody that's running a 20-foot boat with a 250 on not big water, just normal southern, Midwest, eastern waters, of what the important things are when it comes to a prop? What would that be, Todd?
Normally, those boats, Mark, are most likely going to have a 3-blade on there, set up from the dealer that comes with the motor, depending on the motor manufacturer that's on the boat. The 3-blade is your maximum bow lift propeller. Now, when we talk about bow lift, I think people get a little bit of a misnomer application of what creates bow lift and how you get there. And I'll touch on that 1 second. A propeller either pushes down the back of the boat to raise the bow, or it lifts up the back of the boat to lower the bow. So a bow lift or tail lift is not what happens from raising the bow. It's what happens in the back end of the boat. So you look at your Rangers, you look at your, a lot of those boats in the 65 to 70 mile an hour range, they usually come with the 3-blade because a great fishing platform, a little bit heavier of a boat, it tends to provide the most amount of lift to get as much boat out of the water so the angler and the owner of the boat has as much performance as possible. And that's okay. But for that type of water scenario, not a problem whatsoever. When you get into different types of scenarios of water is where the 3-blade can lend itself to do things that it's really not meant to do or doesn't do that well. So really the water you're fishing, the load that you're carrying has a lot to say about what prop choice is going to be correct for you.
All right. What about pitch? And so many people talk about pitch. What is the important part about pitch?
The most important part about the pitch is that you have to find the harmony of where that certain pitch propeller is going to maximize the power curve of the motor. So you mentioned the 250. There's a bunch of people that have the 250 Pro XS, the 2-stroke Mercury motor.
Yeah.
That motor, every single one that I do, Mark, I prop out for roughly about 5,800 to 6,000. Okay, because that's where that motor generates its peak power. You don't want to pay for 250 and end up getting 220 horsepower because you're only turning it at 5,300. So if you've got too much pitch on the boat, that'll lower the hole shot and it'll get slower to get to top speed. And also you're not going to be in the range where the motor makes its peak power. So pitch is critical to make sure that you're getting everything out of the motor and you're in the right RPM range to run the motor the way it's designed.
Very cool. Vent holes.
Mm-hmm.
I hear people talk about vent holes all the time. What's the importance of the vent holes?
The importance of the vent holes is these motors all have exhaust that comes through the lower unit. Okay, so then that goes through the propeller, what we call a full through hub. It's the same diameter as the gear case. When that exhaust comes through, if you do not have vent holes, all that exhaust and aerated water goes behind the propeller blades. When you have the vent holes in a position behind the blade, it allows those exhaust gases and bubbles to roll up the leading edge of the propeller to allow the propeller to spin more when you first get up on plane to get into your power curve of the motor. Now, with that being said, if you have too much aeration or too much bubbles, you can create cavitation or slip. So vent holes are good, but you also have to be aware of the fact that you may have to run a plug inside the vent hole to make the hole smaller. You have to find what's right for your load. Again, for what you're carrying in the boat's all going to make a difference on hole shot, but vent holes can make a big improvement on getting up on plane for the angler.
All right, Todd. And it doesn't matter who the manufacturer is right now. I want to know what your take is. Percentage-wise, how many boats that leave the factory that go to the dealers and then people buy these boats at the dealers, how many of those boats, percentage-wise, do you think are set up for maximum speed and set up properly? Very few, maybe half. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say very few to maybe half. Somewhere in that ballpark. Frank's laughing, of course, but they get a general of what the manufacturer recommends. The dealer, depending on how tight they are with the manufacturer, how many they sell, will have a basic setup. But again, a basic setup that works for one at somebody in New Mexico at 5,000 feet is not going to be the same setup for a guy that's close to sea level in North Carolina.
Right. Right. And that's where you guys come in, right? Because
That's
what you want to do, you want to maximize the setup. I mean, Heck, if you're spending $70,000, $80,000 for a boat and it's supposed to do X amount of miles an hour and you're supposed to be running at 5,900 RPMs, all right, I want to make sure it does that.
Absolutely. And you would be amazed, Mark, to be honest with you. And this isn't a dig on anybody or anybody that sets up the boats, but we run across it probably more times than not where it's not even really close to what the manufacturer's recommendations are and the way that the boat should be set up. And again, when, like you touched on, when you're spending that kind of money, you would think it would be a lot closer, but you'd be amazed more times than not that it's not.
All right, Frank, you got anything to add to that? Is that dead on?
No, that's exactly dead on. I mean, there's a lot of information that flies around on the internet, and some of it is less than accurate. And so if a guy gets led down that wormhole of, researching something that they want to do to their boat, they could be led astray. So I always leave it to the professional to help me get the most efficiency out of my boat. That's why I go to Todd. I mean, after all the years working with Todd, I can set a boat up, but I can't make a prop and I can't tweak the prop out. I don't know how to do all that stuff yet. He won't teach me, by the way. It's job security for him. But so yeah, I mean, he's 100% right. Every boat that I got when I was fishing on tour, I had an idea of where I needed that motor, what jack plate I needed, how far back I needed the jack plate to be, blah, blah, blah. So I would get them set up from the factory exactly like that. They would say, what prop do you want on it? And I would say, I don't care. You know what I mean? I don't care because that's not the prop I'm going to use. So a lot of times I didn't even get a prop with the boat because I just went to Todd, and because by the time we're done with the boat, it may not be the prop I use. So, why bother with it? But, setup is critical. And like even the boat I got now, we had to decompose a lot of it to start over from scratch. And it's like Todd always says, you got to do one thing at a time, because if you change three things, you don't know what change just created what effect. So we deconstructed my bass boat now to get it to its optimum efficiency.
All right. If you could name three things, Todd, that are probably the three most important things to prop setup, what would they be?
Number one would be, what do you want to accomplish out of the boat? Number two would be the weight of the boat. And I would say number three would be the setup from the standpoint of jack plate and setback. And I'll touch on that for a second, Mark, because that's important.
Okay.
Jack plates, everybody knows you need one to optimize the setup of the boat. Certain boats need more setback because they need more lift. The further the motor is mounted back on the transom, the more lift characteristics you'll have for the weight that you're carrying. So knowing what you have with what boat you have is going to be critical to the setup. So jack plate, weight placement, and what you want to accomplish, that gives you a slate. And then you go from there to accomplish what you need to.
Yeah, and don't forget about prop height.
Well, there's no question. That goes along with the jack plate and, the setback. That's all going to make a difference. But again, there's no two boats that act the same way. Certain boats that we deal with are, 80 to 100 mile an hour bass boats that get natural lift and they don't need a lot of help getting out of the water. There's other ones that do. So your prop height, your prop style, your jack plate, and your setback are all going to be different for all those different versions of boats.
How many boats right out of the dealership, or even boats that have been bought from other individuals, have you looked at and then looked at the way that they were set up and you're like, dude, you need to do this. All right, let's tweak this. Let's do this. And then all of a sudden you get an additional 5 to 9 miles an hour and they're up to 5,800 RPMs. I mean, is that something that you see so much that these people just don't realize that they are losing speed and losing power just because they don't understand the basics of the setup?
We do see it for sure. Sometimes it's not in that 5 to 9 mile an hour category. Sometimes, Mark, to be honest, it could be only, a couple mile an hour on the top end for speed. But the difference is the way that the boat carries, the way that the boat accelerates, the way that the boat gets up on plane. I always tell people that if your boat, let's just say, is capable of 70 miles an hour, if from hole shot to 70 miles an hour, if I put a prop on there that only went 70, but got from 0 to 70, 20 boat lengths faster and was easier to drive, would you be okay with that? Most people would say yes.
Yeah. All right. Is that a difficult thing to do, the balance between performance and speed from a handling standpoint?
It is. And again, I can't stress to everybody listening enough that it's there's a balance between the performance and speed based on how you set up your boat. Frank always runs the boat fully loaded, ready for any conditions, ready for anything that he's out there with. So he's got a very heavy tournament load. The next guy may fish by himself, only carry a couple rods in there, doesn't have the live well in, and only carrying 20 gallons of gas. That's a much different story to put together to make run right than it would be to somebody that's on the heavier side.
All right, Frank, I know up in your area there's a lot of people and there's several questions about aluminum boats. Does the setup process work from a principle standpoint the same way for aluminum boats as it does fiberglass boats?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. A boat is a boat. I mean, what it's made out of just will determine, how you're going to set it up. But every boat can be set up. Especially aluminum boats. Now, you got to understand there's several different kinds of aluminum boats. You got your big, deep walleye V boats that handle rough water like a dream, but they're not going to go anywhere fast. But they handle rough water phenomenally. Then you got your semi-flat bottom or semi-V bottom boats, and you still have to set them up rightly, because if you don't, you're going to get your brains beat out of them, because the hull's not designed to take that kind of abuse, waves wise. Aluminum boats are very durable, but a semi V bottom boat is not going to cut water like a V bottom. So, but you can set up aluminum boats the same. The props are going to be a little bit different and stuff like that.
All right. Some questions. Jack wants to know, when would you run a 5-blade?
Particularly on lakes that get big and nasty. And when I say big and nasty, I'm talking about any lake that can throw 4 to 10 footers up. Conversely, I've run them in Florida too, because I can get on plane in 12 miles an hour. So I don't need a lot of water to get on plane. I can get on plane shallower water. So it just depends. Mostly I only use that prop for rough water. And that's usually my spare. I have a rough water prop that is my spare prop. Otherwise, I'm running one of Todd's 4 blades, which gives me the best of both worlds. But whenever I hit the Great Lakes, Champlain, Oneida, Rayburn, I'm going to the rough water prop.
All right. Jim wants to know, when I get a nick, he goes, I'm a shallow water guy. I'm up against the bottom, a lot. I'll be going down the bank. I mean, I can see it in my brain what this guy's doing. When you get little nicks in your prop, is that going to impede my performance?
Todd, you got that one.
No, it probably won't, Mark. Unless the blade is sprung back, unless some of the cup has been, ground out by hitting a sandbar, gravel, something of that nature. Usually a nick is not going to present to you any performance issues. When we get into some of the more higher performance boats, I know Frank touched on this last time he was on, that nick can be what we call a stress riser, which can be a flex point, because that blade is doing acting like a hummingbird wing every time it goes around. Okay. So when you have a nick in there on a performance boat, you're bending it back and forth, and that nick is going to give it a spot where it could propagate a crack. So I would say if it's not real deep, some 400 wet sandpaper, take the nick out as best you can. Something that's deeper, I would say get it repaired by a qualified shop, because you just don't want to file back that damage, because if you do that too many times, then now you're missing blade area, diameter, or what have you, and now the prop's just not going to run the same as it did before.
All right, there you have it. So Matt's okay there, Frank.
Yeah, Matt's all right, man.
This guy is too. Yeah, so he'll be fine. All right, the last time we had Frank on, we talked about rough water. I would say the vast majority of people across the country, they do experience rough water, but not necessarily big lake rough water.
Great.
Right? You get your 4-footers, your 5-footers, your 3-footers. Talk a little bit about the 4-blade and how important it is to run a 4-blade in rough water.
Well, the four blade is very important from this standpoint. Obviously, the having the fourth blade to push the boat, grab the water in sloppy conditions is just giving you a little bit better stability and control and better leverage to push. Okay, that's number one. Number two is the four blade is going to carry the boat at a more level attitude. So when you run into sloppy water, maybe not the 5 to 7s like we're talking about on the big lakes, but it's going to enable you to get up on top of the water and leave that attitude, so the bow is not going to want to be popping up on the air or in the air, and creating a loose or too loose of setup to where the boat's going to be out of control to drive. So the four blade, in layman's terms, Mark, would be like studded snow tires compared to just a regular radial tire for people that drive in wintertime conditions.
Yeah. Plus keeping that level attitude, the boat, the V part of the hull is what's actually cutting through the wave instead of where the boat starts to flatten out towards the pad. So it's going to make your ride a lot smoother and softer.
And the other thing too is with the four blade is that if a boat likes higher jack plate height, the higher you come up on the transom, the three blade is going to struggle a little bit in that category if the boat likes high transom height, where the four blade is going to give you better leverage, better push, and better bite at a higher transom height up on a jack plate also, which allows for less drag of the lower unit, giving you better performance, more RPM, getting you to that power curve that we touched on before.
All right, let's talk a little bit about what some guys out there, they just love to show off. Let's talk about the rooster tail. The rooster tail that's behind the boat. Seriously, Todd, is this just a macho thing? And is the rooster tail really an indicator of how well that your prop's running?
It's overcompensation.
The rooster tail is something that I think late 70s, early 80s, everybody thought looked cool. But in complete honesty with you, Mark, it's showing you that your boat is not set up, because if you have to run that type of trim angle to help get the boat out of the water, your setup is really not very close at all. We always shoot for on a heavily loaded 20 to 21 foot fishing boat to have the rooster tail at the top of the motor cowl or below. If you can picture this, if here's your lower unit, okay, underneath the water on a horizontal plane, your propeller wants to push on that horizontal plane. When that motor is tilted up at this angle, you're not wasting that thrust towards the surface of the water, which is not pushing you forward. So what you want to try to compromise is you want to have the best lift that you can at as close to a neutral trim as you can get to keep that plane moving forward and keep you pushing horizontally instead of up to the surface of the water.
All right, there you have it. Now, we've talked about speed. What about the correlation between hole shot and pitch? What is that?
There's no question, less pitch. We'll just break down pitch for a second if we can, just for the people listening. Let's say you have a 23 pitch 3-blade propeller. In theory, that prop, every time it rotates 360 degrees, is supposed to push you forward 23 inches. Okay, that's pitch because of the angle of the blade. Nobody gets that 23 inches. That's where slip comes into effect. You've got the drag of the boat, you've got the drag of the gear case and everything else that you're trying to push through the water. So the lower the pitch is, that would be like the lower the gear in your car. So if we take that same example with the 23 pitch, if we drop to a 19 or 20 pitch, your hole shot will be faster, your mid-range acceleration will be faster, but now you're going to turn more RPM on the top end, and you might lose a little bit of speed because now you're going to be like driving around in second gear on the freeway compared to fourth or fifth gear on the freeway.
Okay.
Like a lower gear.
Yeah. All right. Let's see if we can do this. I'm going to throw this comment up there. Can you see that, Todd?
I can.
All right. He's running a 198P Ranger aluminum 154 stroke Mercury, 4-inch jack plate, and 3 degrees of added trim with wedges. All right. 5,500 RPMs at 58. Have a worked 23 pitch Tempest Plus. Should I look at bumping up RPMs?
That particular motor, he's going to be really close at 5,500 RPM. Again, I like the 58 to 6 range on those motors. So what I would recommend to Josh would be to try to come up on the transom height on the jack plate a little bit and see if he can turn a little bit more RPM because I think the motor will benefit from a tad more RPM in his particular scenario.
Okay, let me throw another one up here. Drew from Texas. Do you go up or down on the jack plate to minimize the rooster tail?
Normally, Drew, you would go down to minimize the rooster tail. Now, if you're too high up on the transom, that will create a taller rooster tail, as well as using excessive trim angle will cause a rooster tail also. So if your rooster tail is too high and you're not using a lot of trim, that would probably be a good sign that the motor needs to be lowered into the water more to get better bite.
Okay, let's see here. Over on the Bass Zone instant feedback, Blake from Georgia says, I have an 18-foot Ranger with a 1995 Merc 150. I'm running a 23-pitch 3-blade. How would I get out of the hole quicker with a partner and a tournament load in my boat?
He would be a perfect candidate for going to a 4-blade in less pitch. So with that type of scenario, I would suggest that he would probably drop down to a 20 or 21 pitch for that heavy load scenario. He might lose a couple mile an hour on the top end, but for the scenario that he's speaking of to try to get better hole shot and better acceleration with that 2-man turning load, he would definitely benefit from going to a 4-blade and dropping down a pitch.
All right, here, I'm going to throw another one up here. So if pitch makes your hole shot faster in a shallow water fishery, I want to be able to get up on pad in skinny water. What I should be running at 23.
Well, I'm reading it. I don't know what he's running now.
Yeah.
Is he saying that he is running a 23?
Don't know.
I should be. I think he's asking, should he be running a 23?
Tough to say because I don't know what the current setup is doing. But I do know that if he was running less pitch, it will be easier to get up on plane, and he won't have as much bow rise to get up on plane, which will allow him to get through skinny water and shallower water, getting up on plane easier.
All right, he just said he's running a 25.
Then yes, 23 will definitely help for sure. But in his case, I'm assuming that's a 23. One of the tendencies of the 4-blades, Mark, that a lot of people don't realize also is when you get up on plane, you get less bow rise. So when you get up on plane, usually the boat comes up a little bit and then the bow comes down, where the 4-blade is going to shove it forward at a more level attitude, which is going to enable you to get to those shallow water spots and be more efficient getting up on plane.
All right, here's another one. Prop recommendation for a Champion. Wow, there's a name from the past. 188, Yamaha 200. 4-blade, top speed, not important.
Absolutely. 4-blade would be a fantastic propeller for that boat. He will have great all-around performance. And with that particular package, it will do everything he needs to do and then some.
All right, let's see here. Wow, they're starting to fly in now. All right. I know nothing about this one, so read that one, Todd.
Is there anything I can do on my 60/40 outboard jet to gain a few mile per hour? It's on a 16-foot Grizzly.
The outboard jet, that would we don't do anything with the impellers for the jet outboards, but I would say that contacting somebody that has experience with any motor modifications for a particular motor would be his best bet there.
All right, next up, running an 18-foot Skeeter with a 19-pitch 3-blade, only topping out at 3,900 RPMs and 32 miles an hour. That's not very fast.
Well, the biggest thing that stands out to me there, Mark, is that 3,900 RPM. I don't know what kind of motor it is, but a regular 90 horsepower, I'm going to assume that the manufacturer is going to be somewhere right around 5,500 to 6. Most of those are. So if he's only getting 3,900, I would say that he needs to drop down and pitch quite a bit, or check to make sure he's getting wide open throttle and everything with the motor is okay, because he's more than 1,000 RPM off of the peak RPM.
All right, next one up here. Bass Cat Cougar running a 26-pitch 4-blade. Too much pitch, he asked?
Don't know, because I don't know what RPM you're turning. If the 26 4-blade is, turning in that 55 to 6,000 range, he's probably real close. If the motor manufacturer, let's just say, wanted it to turn 6 and he's only turning 5,200, then yes, that would be too much pitch and he would need to drop down. And I think I'm sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead, man.
With the pitch, general rule of thumb, it doesn't work in every single application, but general rule of thumb, one pitch up or one pitch down is 200 RPM. So that guy that had the 26 4-blade, if he needed to gain 400 RPM, he would drop down 2 inches of pitch to pick up the 400 RPM.
All right, very cool. Now, I have no idea if this exists because, honestly, Frank and Todd, I'm not a tinkerer when it comes to blades. I put a 4-blade on, I put a 3-blade on, I go. All right? I'm not the guy that goes out quite a few times on the weekend. You know, I'm a spring guy, I'm a fall guy. That's it. I'm happy. I know my boat is not performing at its peak, though, just based upon I know the setup's not right. Now, I don't know if this exists. But I think it would be cool, and I know you're a busy guy, but if there was some type of way that boat owners could video what they have, video, their setup, video their running, and then send statistical data based upon their current setup, and then boom, you give them a recommendation if they can't get to wherever you are. I mean, is there something that exists like that? Is that something that you've even thought about in the future?
We have, and we do work a lot one-on-one with people in the area that will bring their boats up from different areas and different states that we'll go down to the lake and work with and help those guys out. But what we can do, Mark, and not that video wouldn't tell us a lot of information when we see it, but here's the bottom line. If the customer gives me an accurate RPM, I know the gear ratio of the motor, and I know the pitch propeller, we can work out what we call the slip equation off a prop calculation, some people call it. That will tell me, based on those numbers, how effectively that prop is pushing the boat. So just with those three numbers or pieces of information, we can get very, very, very close to what the boat needs or wants based on the current setup if the information is accurate.
Okay, one more time on that. I want the people to know that because now they have a resource they can go to and you can give them the hookup based upon performance now. What are those three things?
And the numbers that these guys get have to be accurate. It can't be the best time they ever ran it once in their lifetime. It has to be accurate numbers, and the boat has to be set up the way they fish out of it. That means full gas, all their gear, everything. Because if any of that changes, then what Todd recommends could become inaccurate to that boat setup.
That is correct. You have to prop the boat out for how you're using it 95% of the time or more. So again, Mark, we would need the engine RPM, the gear ratio of the motor, which on most of the V6 20 to 21 foot bass boats, we know, and then the pitch of the propeller. And along with that, the GPS speed, and then we'll be able to work out that equation to tell us how good that prop is doing pushing that certain boat.
Okay, and if they're not running the right prop, then you can go here. This is our prop recommendation. Here's what we can do.
Correct. For instance, Mark, let's just say we run that formula. I'm not going to bore you with the formula, but let's say it comes out to be a high slip percentage. Well, that tells me if he's running a 3-blade, that he already needs another blade in the water to help him because the slip percentage is out of line where we know that we'd like to see it. So there's two things that can happen at that point. We can either put more grip into the 3-blade, okay, be a cup height, or you can go to a different style of prop that's going to hook up better. Again, I'll use the layman term analogy of a more aggressive studded snow tire compared to a regular summer tire to get the boat hooked up better.
All right. And before we let you go, we'll make sure that people know how to get in touch with you because just like I threw the comment up there, this is awesome information and people – BTL fans may have never had access to this knowledge, to this information, to where they can get that dialed in.
Yeah, it's this stuff's fascinating to me because I'm a stickler on how I want my boat to handle. I want lots of mid-range. I want attitude, and the boat has to be quick responsing. That's what makes it handle in rough water really well. I started. Top end speed to me isn't crazy, but what I look for is all about handling ability. So I'm the kind of guy, I'll give up a couple miles an hour if that boat's going to do exactly what I need it to do under nasty conditions, because 99% of the time that's what you're encountering. If you ask any tournament guy that fishes how many times in a year he could run flat out nasty all the way to his fishing spot, it's going to be very, very few times.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Good point. All right, Man, they keep coming in here. Let's do this. Josh has this. When you work on a prop, can you adjust it to gain RPM?
We sure can, Mark. We can down pitch your propeller to get you more RPM, just the same as you can up pitch your propeller to lose a little bit of RPM. Normally, you're going to average about 1 inch of pitch down or 1 inch of pitch up. But yes, we can adjust the prop to gain RPM. Absolutely.
All right. So people can send their props to you if they want to?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. We'll get all this info before we let you go. All right. Jeffrey has a recommendation for a Triton TR21 with the 250 Pro XS. Pretty standard stuff. Running a 26 Tempest. I have an Atlas jack plate.
Good
Boat
plate.
has a poor hole shot. Not interested in top end speed. Just want the best all around performance.
For Jeff, I would definitely recommend one of my 4 blades. It would be a 15-inch diameter 4-blade with the dual PVS holes. So he would add 8 holes, vent holes, if you will, to adjust for his hole shot. And I don't think he would lose probably much at all on the top end, even though that's, not a big concern for him. But I would say a 24 pitch 4-blade would work fantastic in his situation. We've done quite a few of those.
All right, let's see here. Nick wants to know, is there ever a situation where hydrofoils work for bass boats?
Nick, I would say that maybe a very, very small boat that's underpowered, sometimes a hydrofoil would be okay. For most of the things that we deal with in the 18 to 21, 22-foot range with V6 motors on them, if you've got a hydrofoil on there, the boat's probably not set up right if it's not doing everything you needed to do.
All right, Drew in Texas, 2019 CX250. 25 T2 at jack plate, 7 dot, turning load 75%, 3/4 full on a tank of gas, 2 guys, rooster tail just above the motor, doing 71. Should I drop the jack plate or change the other, you said?
He doesn't have the RPM there, but I would say that if his RPM range is good and he's in the sweet spot of the motor, I'm assuming T2 that it's a Yamaha. So if he's in the 5,600 to 6,000 range, he's in the right RPM zone. I would say drop it a little bit to get that rooster tail below the top of the motor cowl to get better bite.
All right, next one, CM Legend V20 Mercury 250 Pro XS 2-stroke, currently running 24 pitch 3-blade Fury, turning 5850, wanting a 4-blade for rough water. What would you recommend?
At 5850, I would say a 23 pitch 4-blade would be the right way to go for him for a rough water prop. Depending on the water conditions that he's fishing, everybody's definition of rough water is a little bit different. So I would say a 22 to 23 pitch 4-blade would suit his application very, very well. And Frank touched on this before, Mark. For a lot of guys that see different types of water conditions, it's very, very few times you have the ability to run the boat wide open for top speed in those conditions. So I would rather get up on plane at a slower speed, have the ability to stay on plane at a slower speed, have acceleration that puts you up on top of the waves and for the water conditions and point the boat exactly where you need it to go, than give up a mile or 2 on top end. So that would be a great scenario for him.
Yeah, that mid-range acceleration is critical in rough water. If you can get your boat on plane at a slower speed, like 12 to 15 miles an hour, and it pops right up out of there, and then you have some amazing mid-range acceleration, that gives you the ability to dance and go where the water needs you to go to run that boat nice and smooth and soft.
All right, back over on the Bass Zone instant feedback. Braden in Kentucky wants to know, if you don't have the pitch stamp on the prop, how do you determine what the pitch is of the prop?
If it's not on the side of the propeller, I would say that if he were to take the prop nut off, sometimes it's going to be around the circumference of where the washer and the prop nut is, near the hub of the propeller. And if he still can't find it, I would say he's more than welcome to send it to us, another prop shop, and have it measured. Because if there is no designation on there, really tough to get the data that you need to work it out until you know what pitch prop it is.
All right, let's see here. Another question about vent holes, pros and cons.
Okay, so closing vent holes on a 4-blade Fury. If it's single vent holes and he's got 4 of them, you want to close the vent holes when you're getting excess slip or excess cavitation. So you're getting up on plane, and right before the bow drops over,
You get that.
and it starts going crazy. That means you've got too much ventilation. And I would start in his scenario by plugging 2 of the holes solid, and now you've got 2 open and 2 shut, and see if that helps out.
All right. Would video help, Todd? If somebody wanted to get your advice, would video help? Is that something that somebody actually does?
I don't know if anybody really does it, Mark.
Yeah.
You could be onto something here.
Wow.
But when you can see something and then put it together with the numbers, it's just going to reinforce the data that you need to make improvements.
Yeah. I think it would be much easier to explain. I mean, I know you have the formula, but if you could actually visually tell the story of what is happening and then what you want to get to. I don't know, man. I'm an idea guy. I like throwing stuff out there. I just think it would be very cool to have somebody with the amount of knowledge that you have to be able to look at video of my boat, the setup, and then maybe with it running a little bit and go, okay, man, what do I need to do? What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that. We get quite a few overseas customers, Mark, to be honest with you, because we do business all over the world that we'll send videos of, where they're breaking off water and how the rough water handling is. So, the more information, the better it makes us.
All right, let's see here, man. I don't know if we can get to all these, but we'll get to a few. 2008 Ranger 619V. I had a 2008 Optimax 225 Revolution 21 repowered with a 2019 four-stroke 225, same prop, but only getting 5250 on the RPMs. Do I need a smaller diameter or a 19 pitch to get RPMs up to 5800?
In that case, he may have to go both. He may have to go less pitch and a little bit less diameter because he's pretty far off. Probably by about 3 inches of pitch there, somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah. So he might be able to go smaller diameter and less pitch all at the same time.
All right, next one here. 19.5 Triton, 200 Optimax, running currently 24 pitch, 4-blade trophy, 5,100 RPMs, 58 miles an hour. I would like a better hole shot and some more RPMs. Recommendations?
Based on that boat motor combination, I would like to know more about the jack plate there because that boat should be capable of doing more than 58 at 5,100 RPM as it sits, but only if he has the ability to get the motor up. For example, if Force's motor is directly on the transom or doesn't have the ability to raise it up on a jack plate, that's going to impair his ability to get more RPM and more speed out of the boat. Because he just doesn't have the ability to get the motor out of the water more for more RPM.
All right. How important is that jack plate from a manual jack plate compared to, obviously, when you can raise it up and down? I mean, that is a huge asset, isn't it?
Huge asset. And, Frank's boat that he just got this summer, we had to completely change the whole dynamic of the jack plate, the setback, where the motor hole was mounted. We ended up, I believe, 2.25 inches higher than where it was set up. We had to change the bottom cap design of the skid plate that was on the bottom of the jack plate that was causing some water interference that was getting our slip percentage out of line. So it's very important. Now, I will say this, whether it's manual or hydraulic, most guys, once they get the right setup in the right area, they don't really touch it. Now, for somebody that's constantly fishing in shallow or flats, where you have to go up and down a lot, that's no problem. Hydraulic jack plate will be good for you. But most of the other guys, once you get the right height, you can pretty much set it and forget it.
All right, Frank, I want to ask you, were you one of those paranoid guys? And maybe that's the wrong word.
Yes,
but,
I'm going to say yes.
Were you one of those paranoid guys that after each tournament that you would definitely take your prop off and make sure that there wasn't any line or braid or whatever in there? Were you one of those guys?
Well, I just do it anyway. I mean, I'm constantly switching blades from my standard running prop to my rough water prop. So I'm doing it all the time anyway. Okay. As a rule of thumb, my paranoia comes in bolts. Okay. Screws, nuts, and bolts. I always make sure everything's tight and everything's where it's supposed to be. Because the worst thing you can do is have a jack plate on with loose bolts. Because that could cripple you on the water in an instant. I mean, I had I mean, I had it happen to me once when I was a kid. My whole jack plate whacked out of place because I had a couple bolts that got loose. Being on Lake Erie in big water, that motor was constantly, shimmying on the jack plate, and I wound up ovaling out the holes. I'm lucky I got back. And I was a young kid. I was probably in my late teens. After that, I don't monkey around. I make sure everything's tight all the time. It's just
part of it, man. Part of it. It's that checklist. All right, Todd, a ton of people. We can't get to all these, but what I want to do is we've never had a prop guy on this show in all the years. I would like to help the BTL fans out. How can they get in touch with you? What can they do? Can they send the videos? I think the video thing is cool. I may have to talk to you later about that, getting that set up for you. I don't know what your staffing's like, but I think for those people out there that really want the ultimate setup, if they give you the data that you need and then also give you video, they could live in frickin' San Antonio, Texas, and get their boat totally dialed in. Correct?
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And we take great pride, Mark, in trying to understand the customer's wants and needs. That's just not cliche. We understand what's going on with the physics behind it. We understand from the customer what they want to accomplish out of the boat and the setup. And we take our time to make sure it's right and it's done right the first time.
All right. So if somebody in San Antonio, Texas wants to do that, how can they do it?
Very easily. You could call us at the shop, or you can just go online, hydromotive.com. We are easily accessible. We're open 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and we'd love to hear from them and love to be able to help them out.
All right, dude, I'm going to talk to you later about this video thing. I just think with this, with cell phones and the way that cell phone video is now, somebody could very easily take this, just upload it directly to you, and then you may have to hire somebody just to do analyst of what all the video and all the statistical data that you have coming in. That would be cool, because I don't think anybody in this industry really offers a service like that. At least I haven't run across anybody. Have you, Frank?
I have not, but I haven't looked. I got that guy right there.
All right. Last thing I got to ask, man. All right. Who's the better smallmouth guy? Todd, you or Frank?
Well, look, I'm not a big fisherman, Mark, but I can say the last time on Frank's boat that the prop guy had the total amount of fish covered with the other two big-time fishermen.
Ooh. Yeah, he did. He actually did, and he caught his first smallmouth too.
I did.
To boot.
Really?
Yeah, we were actually muskie fishing, and needless to say, that's enough on its own. But yeah, Todd wound up catching almost all the bass that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Todd, can't thank you enough, man. I know the fans will appreciate it. And folks, if you really want to get your boat dialed in, get in touch with Todd and his folks. They will definitely take care of you. Heck, I need to do it. Do you know about my retirement boat, Frank?
Yeah, very little bits and pieces about it.
Dude, it's a 2007, all right, Procraft, 21-foot Procraft with a 2007 225 Mercury Optimax that only had, when I bought it last year, had 18 hours on it.
Wow.
The dude sent me a screenshot of the laptop that he had, the whatever it is, where you plug it in and it gives you all the data on the motor. Yeah, 18 hours.
Yeah, the diagnostic.
18 hours. Yeah.
The DDT. That's a nice find there. You did well.
That is a rarity. But the dude that had it just never used it, and it was in a storage thing. And obviously we love Bass Cat. Matt's running the Bass Cat, but I knew one of these days I was just going to need a boat, and I looked at it and said, "That's a pretty doggone good deal there. 18 hours, yeah, let's do it."
That's brand new. That's hell. 100 hours is brand new.
Yeah,
that's a good find.
So when I'm 70 years old and I'm out there crappie fishing,
you're gonna have hair like that when you're 70.
All right, so great stuff, and I may have to take a video and give you my data, because I just switched to a 4-blade because the hole shot on that thing sucked. I'm just gonna be honest with you, it was not good, and I was like, okay, let me see what a 4-blade does. So I haven't even ran it yet.
Well,
I bought this 4-blade 4 months ago, and I haven't even had it in the water yet.
To your point exactly, Mark, we were talking before that here's a boat that was literally never used, that came from a dealer, came from somewhere, and you just said the whole shot wasn't good.
No,
so there's more of that goes on than what you would think. So we'd love to help you out.
All right, cool stuff, Todd. One more time, tell the folks if they want to get in touch with you, the website, and then your phone number. I don't know if you want to give away the phone number or not, but whatever you want to do.
Shop phone number is 330-425-3629. That'll go directly to me. And the website is hydromotive.com.
There you have it. All right. Good friend there, Frank. Nice job, man.
Thanks, you guys.
Mark, I appreciate you having us on. It was a pleasure.
All right. We're going to let you go, Todd. Frank and I are going to wrap it up. But, man, you can come on anytime and answer BTL fans' questions about props and setups. So just let me know if the fans want more, and it sounds like they want more. We'll have you on again, man.
If they want more, I'd be more than happy to do it for you guys.
All right, man. Take care, Todd.
We'll see you guys. Be good.
All right.
See you,
Adios, dude.
All right, man. That's good stuff. A lot of people appreciate the knowledge, and that's what it is, man. That experience and knowledge that Todd has. Holy cow, man.
Yeah, I mean, now knowledge is king, but true knowledge is really king, because you could think you have a lot of knowledge, but it has to be true. And if it's true, you're going to get results. I don't know, I love fishing more than anything, but I love running the boat too. So it's a toss up. You know what I'm saying? I like driving them. Remember back in the old days, they did that one thing in Bass where they
the WCF.
The obstacle course.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do that so bad. And then when I started fishing Bassmasters, they did away with it. And I was like, oh man, I was a little late.
They were building bass boats
for that.
They were enclosing areas and doing all kinds of crazy stuff.
Oh yeah. I wanted to do that so bad. I couldn't stand it.
All right. I'm trying. There's people on the instant feedback that want his website. What do you remember what the website was? And I'm going to throw it out here. Do you remember what it was, Frank?
Hydromotive Engineering, or was it Hydromotive?
I don't know. Let me see here.
Here, I'll find out right now. I'm texting the man right now.
Well, I'm doing the Google search right here. Let's see here. Is it Twinsburg, Ohio?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think I got it here. Here, I'm just going to copy this link. I got it.
See, where the hell's Matt when you need him?
I know. See, I can't. I multitask pretty good, but dude, he is definitely missed when he is not here.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's see here. All right, so what are your plans, man? You fishing any this week? I know we told the people you're doing the show Tuesday and Wednesday with me, but what else you have going on?
It worked out. It actually worked out really well because our weather's terrible. We're going to have 1.5 inches of rain the next 2 days. It's pouring down rain right now. So I can't film in that stuff. So, it worked out good for me, because if the weather was decent, I'd have been on the water all these days. So I'm kind of happy that's how it fell out.
Very nice. All right. I'm going to try to get a guest lined up. We've had these back-to-back-to-back events. Have you ever interviewed another angler? I was thinking about that.
No, I never really interviewed another angler, but I can come up with some questions.
Somebody was wanting to know, and I can't remember if it was the first show you did or the second show, and it was after we had signed off. He wanted to know, what is your worst prop story? Do you remember a prop story?
Yeah.
So you got that one?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So here's the deal. We were on Kentucky Lake, and they dropped the lake like 5 feet. And I was staying in a cabin in the back of this one creek arm. And every day in practice, I would run out of the creek, follow my GPS line, because now what's happening is I got all these little shallow rock piles that are now just below the water surface. So I had to make sure that I was in this channel going back to my cabin and coming back to the launch ramp every morning. So here's what happened. This particular legend I had one of Todd's 5-blade race boat props, a very expensive prop. It's for like cigarette boats and Donzies and stuff like that. Well, this one legend I had loved that blade, and it ran it really good. So the day before, I was at the Mercury trailer with the this is so stupid, with the technicians, and we all the technicians on the trail, we became good friends. Okay, so I was bragging about the prop, showing them the prop and everything. And so the next day after the tournament, I was running back to the creek where my cabin was in. This was after the weigh-in, and it was really, really rough. And I had come underneath the bridge, and there was another guy coming underneath the bridge. So as you know, testosterone, you're going to play a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I know what my boat's going to do in these big waves, so I can eat this guy's lunch. So he gives me the high sign to go, and I freaking let her rip, and he lets it rip, and we were side by side, and I pulled away from him, and I passed up my creek channel. I cut back in to go to the creek channel, and as I was running down the creek, my GPS corrected itself, and I'm like, oh no, my track lines are all going that way, and I'm going that way. I said, oh no, man. Boom, I hit the rock pile, and that prop was completely mangled. I mean, completely just mangled. I pulled the boat out of the water, and I ran up to the Mercury trailer to make sure my lower unit was okay. And the guy looks at me, he goes, hey dude, that prop's not so impressive anymore, is it? I said, no.
Man. Like a ball of aluminum foil, just dude, all crinkled up. Man.
It looked like one of those dredging machines. You know, they got the claw on the front of the dredger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was a beautiful deal right there.
Wow. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up today, Frank. Once again, just outstanding info. I know the fans appreciate it. And once again, folks, if you're wanting to get your boat set up right, look at that info that I put out there on the instant feedback. Hydromotive Engineering. With
and
Todd.
We're going to talk fishing tomorrow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Good.
We're going to, the Elite Series event at the Chick's going to be wrapped up, and we'll, like I said, I'm going to try to get a couple people on this week too, so we can talk about that. We'll talk about fall fishing. Talk more about fall fishing, Frank. So, once again, I really, really appreciate you doing this, sitting in for Matt. Hopefully, Matt will have a much, much better week than he did his previous week. It's history, man. He's got to move on. Got to move on. All right, that's going to wrap things up. Frank, tomorrow, everybody be safe. We're out of here.
See ya.